This is Tel with Oshawa Bushcraft. I wanted to have a quick talk with you guys today about traditional Nepalese-made kukris. Now, before we get right to the knives, I want to give you guys a quick bit of backstory. It's only going to take a minute, and there will be some pictures, so please be patient. Now, during my time in the military, I never got the opportunity to go overseas and train with the Gurkhas, but I did meet a few guys who did. Also, through the Legion, I met a handful of veterans who had the opportunity to serve alongside Gurkhas in Europe during World War II. So from these guys, I heard all sorts of fantastic stories about these tough little soldiers from Nepal and their knives. Because of this, I've always had an interest in kukris, and I've owned a few of them over the years. Now, because the traditional Nepalese kukri makers aren't a big fan of putting maker's marks on the blade, it's hard to tell if your blade's authentic unless you bought it from Nepal yourself. There's a lot of knockoffs on the market coming out of Pakistan and India. Fast forward to the spring of 2019, and myself and some of the other members of Oshawa Bushcraft were having a conversation online about planning our survival challenges for the coming summer. We do a couple of these trips every year, where it's essentially just a weekend camping trip with a very restricted kit list. For this particular trip, we were talking about restricting people to a single cutting tool, like they had to carry just an axe, nothing else, or just a machete. Somebody threw up the idea of just a kukri. The problem quickly came up that not everybody owned a kukri. We started looking for the options that were locally available to us on the market, like the Condor or the Cold Steel. A man by the name of Purna Darnell joined our conversation on Facebook, introduced himself as a blacksmith, and said he'd be happy to make our kukris for us. I had a look at Purna's profile, and sure enough, he is the owner-operator of the Great Gurkha Kukri House, located in Kathmandu, Nepal. And he is a blacksmith toolmaker and has been making kukris for decades. I was able to just private message Purna through Facebook and have a conversation with him, negotiate out a group buy for 5 of his kukris and a flat rate fee for all of them to be shipped to me. And then the next time I seen each of our members who wanted to participate in this challenge, I gave them their individual kukris. Once we agreed on which model we wanted, Purna told me he would have my kukris at my door in 10 days. It would take 5 days to forge them and 5 days for them to ship. And sure enough, they were at my front door in exactly 10 days. The condition I put on that first group buy was that I asked Purna to send me video every day of the forging process of them making our knives. Now, at the time, he probably thought I didn't trust his workmanship, but what I wanted that video for was every day I was sharing it to the Oshawa Bushcraft Facebook group, and it drew a lot of attention. Before that first set of kukris even arrived here in Canada, I was already organizing a much larger second group buy, and then there was a third one after that. So I had told Purna I needed the kukris here by a certain date so that I could distribute them to the members at the Oshawa Bushcraft Primitive Skills Gathering in June. Now, he knew we had an event going on, so he threw in a small belt knife that he'd forged for us, just so I could give it away as a door prize to one of the members. He didn't have to do that, but it was a very nice gesture to the group. Thank you for your patience. Now let's have a look at some kukris. We looked at every model of kukri that Purna made. He offered to do any kind of modifications we wanted, up to and including a full custom kukri. And we seriously considered it, but in the end we decided to stick with a traditional pattern because that was kind of the whole point here. The model we eventually decided on was Purna's 10.5-inch Service Panawal Jungle Kukri. This is one of his more popular models, and it's a little larger than most. I would say the standard being probably a 9.5-inch kukri. This is a 10.5-inch blade. And he probably recommended it to us because of its size, knowing as North Americans we're a little bigger than people over there, and because this has a full length and full width distal tapered tang, which he knows as North Americans we usually prefer over a rat tail or a stick tang that is a little more traditional to most kukri models. Like I said before, we initially didn't opt for any modifications on these, but Purna did take his own initiative and gave us a lanyard hole at the back of the handle here. After seeing Purna's shop, I want you guys to look at the fit and finish on this blade. Every part of this handle is absolutely tight. There is no gaps in anything. Now I want you to keep in mind, mine has seen a lot of field use in the last year and a half. It used to have a high polish on it. It's looking a little faded now. It's seen many sharpenings. This is a traditional kukri sheath. It is 2 pieces of wood wrapped in what is my understanding is either pig or goat leather. In this case, this one's actually made of rawhide. Kukris traditionally come with two smaller tools mounted in the back of the sheath like this. You have a Chocmoc that is not actually a knife as much as it looks like one. It is blunted, and it is actually a sharpening tool. Use something like a steel. I carry mine. I only use this for emergencies. And your Carta, which is just a smaller knife meant for smaller tasks. Some souvenir kukris come with Cartas and Chocmocs with stubby little handles on them, more like the handle on a ferro rod, and they are practically useless as a tool. They're merely a novelty. Well, although these have a short handle, they are still a functional tool. We carried these right after we got them, both at the gathering and on our Kukri Survival Challenge, and we all found the Carta to be a very usable little tool in the field, whether for woodworking or cleaning small game. So I reached out to Purna and asked him, would it be possible to make Cartas that had a slightly longer handle, just long enough to get our pinky finger on it? And he said, no problem, just draw me a picture of what you want, I'll make it happen. This is the drawing I made for him just with blue pen on a piece of white paper. And I took a picture of it with my phone and sent it to him through Facebook Messenger. Now I took an outline of the original Cartas and I drew what we wanted. All I added was about an inch on the handle. Here's the Cartas he made for us. Absolutely dead on, just based off a sketch that I took a picture of with my phone. Now the improved Cartas, which I don't believe have a name yet, are a very useful tool. There's just barely enough handle to get your whole hand on it. And these have proven to be a very effective tool in the field. And you can see here they fit back in the original sheath just fine. I want to take one last quick second to discuss two misconceptions some people have about kukris. The first point I wanted to talk about is that some people think of these as unwieldy, as if they're some kind of exotic fighting knife because of the curved blade. And I'm going to use this edge in the table to kind of illustrate what I'm talking about here. So, this is how most people think of a kukri. It's got this wicked forward swept blade, when in reality, think of it more like that. It actually has a straight blade, it has a curved handle, and the purpose of that curved handle is all about ergonomics. So when you're holding it, your wrist is at a natural angle. The other misconception I want to deal with is that all kukris are these super heavy cleavers meant for heavy chopping. So this kukri here weighs a little over 500 grams. This hatchet, which would be, this is the DeWalt hatchet, it would be considered a small hatchet at best, weighs almost 1,000 grams. It almost weighs twice as much as this. For more perspective, this is my Buck Folding Hunter Model 110, kind of a standard pocket knife. This weighs a little over 200 grams. It weighs almost half as much as my kukri. It can kind of put things into perspective when you think of this as the weight of 2 pocket knives. I finally get to show you guys the sheath being worn. Most of us wear it as a cross draw where it works really good, especially with a knife this size. That knife being so light and the sheath being so light, it carries nicely on the belt. It's actually an important point that your kukri and your Carta stay within easy reach, because when you can easily get at them all the time, that becomes your first tool you reach for all sorts of jobs, not just chopping on things. Something I need to disclose to you guys is that Purna didn't give us any freebies or handouts. All the kukris that the group members received were paid for in full. I'm sure many of you want to know about prices, and I'm sorry there's not going to be any prices in this video because I expect it to stay up for a number of years, and I don't want people 10 years from now trying to quote Purna 2019 prices. To put the cost in perspective though, at the time I bought this, and still currently right now, I received this shipped from Nepal at my door for less than the Condor kukri would have cost me locally. Before I throw a complete endorsement out for Purna and his kukris and his work, it's important we discuss some of the drawbacks so that you don't run into them later and then feel like I deceived you some way. The first drawback we should discuss is these sheaths, because they have two kind of major problems with them. The first problem being the blade just cutting through the sheath. And what you will see happen is people just being careless, and they either push the tip of the blade out through the back of the sheath, or when they go to draw, they're pulling forward and they cut through the front of the sheath. The second major drawback is that your Carta and your Chocmoc are not mounted in here particularly well, and they're very easy to lose. Now, this is not specific to Purna's work, this is just to the traditional style. If you look at an antique store or a pawn shop and you find an old kukri, chances are the Carta and the Chocmoc are going to be missing, and there's going to be a bunch of duct tape or hockey tape wrapped around it, holding it together because it's been cut through. Another point we should discuss is that every part of this was fashioned by Purna from raw materials in his shop. This entered his shop as a block of wood, a block of brass, a block of steel, and a leather hide, and he fabricated every part of it in shop. Because of that, this steel is just regular 5160. It is not stainless steel. It is not coated with anything. If you don't take care of it, it will rust on you. This handle, I believe, is the Nepal version of rosewood. I guarantee is not stabilized. It's probably from a tree he cut down on the family farm, and it is just a dried piece of wood. So you have to look after it. If you don't keep this oiled, it is going to shrink and it is going to crack on you. I don't feel that any of these points are in any way a fault of Purna's. I just want people to be realistic when you're buying a traditionally made tool that it's going to require maintenance. If you're not ready to do that maintenance, buy a stainless steel kukri with a plastic handle. It's coming time for me to conclude this video. So, can I tell you guys that Purna makes the best kukris in the world? No, I don't have enough experience. I haven't tested enough kukris to be able to say that. I've owned maybe half a dozen in my life. But can I tell you he is a master craftsman and an expert blacksmith by every definition of the word? Absolutely. I can honestly tell you guys that I trust Purna's work. If knowing what I know now, if I could go back in time and change things, I would still buy these kukris from him when I did. In fact, I'm looking to pick up a third one in the near future, and I will absolutely be ordering it from him again. Probably one of the best parts about having our kukris made by Purna is that we weren't just ordering off of a website or out of a catalog. We got to order from the craftsman himself. Purna and I are friends on Facebook now. We talk every now and then. He comments on stuff we're doing in Oshawa Bushcraft. We get to see each other's kids have birthdays. We get to see each other's families celebrating different holidays. Wrapping this up, guys, if you're in the market for a traditional Nepalese-made kukri and you want to order it right from the craftsman who made it, you should give a good look at my friend Parna Darnell at the Great Gurkha Kukri House. I'll put a link to his store down in the description. As well, if you don't want to take my word on it, you can come to the Oshawa Bushcraft Facebook group and ask about it. Literally dozens of our members own his kukris now. If you're interested in getting one of the modified jungle kukris like I showed you, make sure to drop my name when you speak to him. He'll know what you're talking about. Thank you for watching this, guys. Hope you found it informative. Until next time, go outside. YouTube will be here when you get back.